Conversion factors and unit cancellation. This is the second half of Chapter 2. A physical quantity must include a number and a unit. So unit conversion is also called dimensional analysis, and it involves two equivalents, meaning you have two different units that are equivalent. So 1 foot equals 12 inches. And see the bar that divides the two? That's the same as an equals. So you could put 1 foot over 12 inches, and that's equal to 1, or 12 inches over 1 foot, and that's equal to 1. You just need to make sure that the two units are equivalent, or that they're equal to each other. And you need to remember that you can write them either way, the 1 foot on top, and the 12 inches on bottom, and the 12 inches on top, or the 1 foot on bottom. These are conversion factors. They do not limit significant figures. They are infinite, so your significant figures will never depend on conversion factors. 3 feet, 12 inches, 1 foot. And notice how when you start with a feet, then the feet, or singular foot, has to be on the bottom in the next step, or it won't cancel out, and the inches are on the top. And notice that the inches and the foot must be equal to each other. So you always begin with one item, and then you use your conversion factors to cancel out. And the conversion factor that will cancel will be the one that is the same on the bottom, and the one that's on the top is your answer. The significant figures aren't correct in this particular calculation because we began with 3 feet, but we ended with 36 inches. So we had 1 sig fig to begin with, but 2 sig figs to end with. It should technically be 40 inches. Question: how many centimeters are in 1.32 meters? So you need to memorize Table 2.2 in Chapter 2 of your textbook, and that will go from meters to centimeters, and you'll see that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter, or you could also say 1/100th of a meter is equal to 1 centimeter. So here is the equality. 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, or 0.01 1/100th of a meter equals 1 centimeter. You can write it with the 1 meter on top and the 100 centimeters on the bottom, or 100 centimeters on the top and the 1 meter on the bottom. Because you're starting with 1.32 meters, you need your meters on the bottom. So you'll start with your 1.32 meters and you'll use the conversion factor with the 1 meter on the bottom. So you have to decide which one to use. 1 meter goes on the bottom, and that's the only way that you can get the units to cancel. Whatever is left on the top will be your final unit. So you take 1.32 times 100 and you get 132 centimeters. We started with 3 significant figures, so we end with 3 significant figures. Let's do another one. How many meters is 8.72 centimeters? Again, your equality is 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. So you could write 1 meter on top with the 100 centimeters on the bottom, or 100 centimeters on top with 1 meter on the bottom. Then you'll begin with what you were given. Always what you were given is your starting factor, 8.72 centimeters. Because you're starting with centimeters, you need to use the equivalence or conversion factor that has the centimeters on the bottom. So it's going to be 1 meter over 100 centimeters. Otherwise, the units won't cancel. And then you will take 8.72 divided by 100, and you'll be left with meters. How many feet is 39.37 inches? So you need your equivalence between feet and inches. The equality is 1 foot equals 12 inches. You can write it as 1 foot over 12 inches, or 12 inches over 1 foot. You begin with what was given, 39.37 inches. And again, your significant figures will depend on what was given. So it's going to have 4 significant figures because that's what you began with. Your inches will need to go on the bottom because you're trying to get rid of inches, and that's what you started with. Your 1 foot then will go on the top. Inches cancel out because they're on the diagonal, and it will be 39.37 divided by 12. They should honestly have 4 significant figures. So they began with 4, they should end with 4. How many kilometers is 15,000 decimeters? Again, this is from your table 2.2 that you need to memorize. So you need to know that there's 1,000 kilometers in a meter and that a decimeter is 1/10 of a meter. So you're starting with 15,000 decimeters. Decimeters is going to have to go on the bottom, and meters will actually go on the top because meter is your base unit, meaning it does not have a prefix in front of it. You can tell because it's just meter. There's no other letter in front of it. So whenever you have to go from one prefix to another prefix, you go through the base unit, or the unit that doesn't have the prefix. Again, decimeter goes on the bottom because you need to cancel it out, but we're going to have to do another step because if we stopped here, we would end up with meters, and they want kilometers. So our next step is going to be to cancel out meters. So meters is going to go on the bottom. And in 1 kilometer, there's 1,000 meters. So the meters will cancel out, and we'll be left with kilometers. When we use our calculators, we'll say 15,000 divided by 10, and that answer divided by 1,000. Because anything on the bottom is divided by, and anything on the top is multiplied. But on the top, it's just 1, which means that it doesn't matter if we take 15,000 times 1 times 1. We'll get the same answer. So you want to check to make sure that 1 meter and 10 decimeters are the same. And you want to make sure that 1 kilometer and 1,000 meters are the same, that those are correct equivalents. And then your answer is 1.5 kilometers. We started with 2 sig figs, and this correctly ended with 2 sig figs. How many seconds is 4.38 days? We're going to start with 4.38 days, and we're going to have to go from days to hours. 1 day has 24 hours. We put the day on the bottom so it cancels out. Now we're going to have to go from hours into minutes. 1 hour equals 60 minutes. We put the hour on the bottom so that it cancels out. But again, that line that divides them is an equals. Now we're going to go from minutes to seconds, and 1 minute will equal 60 seconds. Minutes has to be on the bottom, and 1 minute has to be equal to 60 seconds. When we multiply this out, we take 4.38 times 24 times 60 times 60. We get 378,432 seconds. It really should be 3 significant figures because that's what we began with. So it would truly be 378,000 seconds. So if you're accounting for significant figures, which you always should, it's always what you started with, not what you use as a conversion. And you can write it as 378,000 or 3.78 times 10 to the 5th. Same thing. We've just used scientific notation here. Simple math with conversion factors. I'm going to end this video here and do the next one in a separate video.